All right, so this is the last mile kind of Q&A sessions. We've been doing this we've done 4 terms now, with the winter one coming up here. We've had a whole year in of awarding this scholarship. So we thought we would do a Q&A both for our students who are interested in applying as well as staff to just give some context about kind of some of the behind the scenes of what that process looks like, and maybe some like even recommendations from those of us who've been reviewing these applications and kind of making some of the award decisions. So I'm thankful that both Destiny and Linda are here. Both of them have been on the review committee kind of the whole time and can give some of that different perspective that goes into that. My name is Matt Bezic. I'm the executive director of the Oregon Trio Association. So I'm the one in charge of kind of facilitating the website and a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. And I actually send out the checks, notify students, kind of answer any questions anybody has about this process, but I'm not necessarily the one choosing who gets all of these funds, right? We have a committee of folks who are Trio professionals from around the state who serve and kind of review the applications and go through the scoring process and make decisions about who to award funding to. So I'm going to start just right at the gate of just doing a quick screen share and kind of highlighting just some basics about what exactly last mile is in case this is a relatively newer concept, right? So we have funding from the state of Oregon through a grant, and we have basically allocated $100,000 per year that we are awarding in what we are calling the Last Mile Award. So this is designed to provide financial assistance to those students who are close to graduating but are finding that either financial difficulties have kind of gotten too much, or their financial aid has started to expire. They're maybe no longer eligible for Pell Grant funds or have maxed out student loans, like any kind of combination of financial challenges, but just need that extra little push, that last little bit of scholarship funds to help them get over the top and actually graduate and finish with their degree. So that is what these funds are designed to do. Over time, the maximum award amount has kind of shifted. The award committee over time has kind of moved away from very large amounts of money to smaller amounts with the hope of impacting more students. So as it currently stands, the maximum award is listed at about $4,000. But just for some clarity, the last time around when we awarded amounts in the fall, almost all the amounts were in the $2,500 amount or $2,000 award amount. So we've been shifting to kind of a less so it can impact more students, but you can still make a request as high as $4,000 should that be the case. As far as who can apply, as long as you are currently enrolled in a TRIO program through Oregon Trio Association and you are within 45 credits of completing your degree, you are eligible. If you've been awarded funds previously, you are not eligible to receive those again. If you applied once when you had 45 credits left and didn't get it, and now you're at 30, you can apply again. When you get to 15, you can apply again. There's nothing stopping you from reapplying. And we'll kind of get into that a little bit about how that actually can help your case the closer you are to graduation. But just to highlight some of the actual application requirements again, we do want to show some demonstration of financial need or an exhaustion of federal financial aid. So one of the items that we ask folks to submit are screenshots of basically your current federal Pell Grant and federal loan status. We have these instructions that kind of show you how to log into your FSA-ID and review these reports that will show you how much of the Pell Grant you use and how much financial aid you use. This just allows us to have some verification in terms of like how exhausted your financial resources are. Obviously, the more exhausted it is, the higher likelihood of your like candidacy as far as demonstrating financial need through there. So I'm just kind of going over quickly some of the requirements, and then we can maybe answer some questions and elaborate more on what our actual process looks like from those of us who read it. The educational plan, this is mostly just to show what the rest of your coursework looks like, right? If you're within 45 credits of graduating, hopefully that's something, I mean, sometimes that could take more than a single year, right? Depending on how big of a course load you're taking, but we kind of provide a space here to outline the courses that are remaining, as well as provide some insight of what kind of strategies you have in place to be successful in completing those. It's also providing a like financial summary of kind of what costs are associated with finishing your degree. This does not just have to be like the bill that the college sends you, right? We have unmet need here. That doesn't necessarily, that's a term your institution will tell you on your financial aid summary, but we are encourage you to include things such as housing costs, transportation, medical bills, like all those kind of outstanding financial challenges that we know can impact a student's ability to be successful. And then we don't ask for any recommendations, but we do ask that somebody from your TRIO program does complete just a basic checklist that just kind of confirms that you are indeed a candidate for this and kind of can vouch on behalf of a TRIO program, not only that you meet the criteria, but also that you are an engaged student within that TRIO program, that you have a relationship with them. We're trying to invest these funds in students who've had their lives positively impacted through TRIO programming. All of that eventually just gets put into the application. All right, hold on. I was updating something on the website yesterday. This is going to be fixed. If you're watching this recording, it will be fixed as soon as I did this. But it appears that it's linking to the calendar. That'll be fixed, but it's kind of an ugly looking form at the moment. Everything else, we've updated every other aspect of our website except that page. And apparently it doesn't like that I haven't updated it. So all of that information, though, you basically just attach to the application, as well as 3 essays just addressing these 3 questions. So what impact has TRIO made on your educational journey? What are the financial challenges you're facing in completing your degree? And you can reference your educational plan as a reference. And then what life obstacles or challenges impacted your journey? So all these are due by November 18th. And then from there, what I do is I kind of collect all that information and I put it on pretty much Google Forms, and I send it out to the review committee. And then we have about 2 weeks to review all of those. And then I compile all that and we meet one more time and select the individuals who are going to be awarded funds and how much that we are awarding. During the scoring process, there's basically 4 areas that we are scoring. So the first is your actual education plan. And then the other 3 are each of these essays. The way we score it is basically a 1, 2, or 3. 2 is considered to be just kind of like, oh, this was average, right? Just kind of an average response. A 3 is an exceptional response. A 1 is maybe a below average response. So we're trying to remove this like 0 to 10 and all the kind of gray area that can exist in some larger scales, and really just focus on a smaller range and just score it on that process. I think now might be a good time if either Destiny or Linda, if you're willing to maybe provide some insights just on what your mindset is, or what things are you looking for? What does your process look like when you are actually reviewing these applications?
I can't see Destiny, so I can go first. It turns out I'm the hardest scorer according to Matt last time around. I thought I was the marshmallow. But in terms of like what I look for, I think the first question, Matt, is the first question, what impact has TRIO made in your education journey?
Yes,
I know.
yes.
Okay, so I know as a reader what I'm going to look for, things that are going to float to the top for me, is if you are talking about a TRIO professional that has made an impact on your educational journey, right? So I'm see Michelle. If Michelle's my advisor, I'm like, Michelle has been wonderful. She's been instrumental in example. That is going to be helpful for me as a reader versus you just listing all the things that the TRIO program offers. And I've read some that are like, I take advantage of the tutoring, I like the workshops, but they don't really get below that superficial level. And so if I'm reading that particular essay, it will score maybe a 1, versus if you say Michelle has been wonderful or Robin's been wonderful in these type of ways and give examples, I'm more likely to give you a 3. So that's an example of how I would score. And that's what I've been seeing for, the applications we've been reading. And just to give the professionals here and also students who are listening, we get about 44, 45 applications that we're reading. And traditionally we may be awarded Was it Matt 5 or 6 every quarter?
Yeah, at most it's maybe like 10 or 12, but oftentimes, yeah, it can be anywhere from 5 to 12.
So I'm going to toss it to Destiny because I have
Yeah.
other things I could say too. That's not so much the essay portion.
And a funny twist of events, because it's Linda and I on here. Linda is the hard one, and it turns out I'm the marshmallow. So, so you're getting both perspectives. I tend to start added to. I also look at their educational plan and I look at how much money they're asking for. Because if you're asking for a substantial amount of money and you have a long way to go and it's over a year that you have to complete, I think that's a bigger ask than if you are one term away and you're asking for $3,000 to complete your education. So I take that into account when I read them. Same with Linda. If it seems like the impact Trio has had on you is that you check out a textbook every term, like that's going to score a little lower. If there does seem like you have made a connection with someone in Trio, and it doesn't even have to necessarily be a Trio advisor, but if your tutor, right, that person got you through, I just want to see that you showed up, you really participated in the program, and you can talk about the impact it's made on you. For the financial, it's kind of the same, right? We do read a lot of these. So when it's like listing off the things that you need to spend the money on, that tends to be a little lower for me. Like I want to see a succinct narrative about like what you're facing. I would also say like it's 300 to 700 words, and 700 is, it's a lot. So the more succinct you can make it just on how many we're reading, I think for me, that's better, because I see them sometimes and they're like a novel and I'm like, okay, we're on number 3 and I've got 41 of these left to go. So the more succinct they are, the better.
Can I also add, as we're talking about the financial piece, is that, Destiny was referring to the unmet need. For the professionals here, if you all could help your student figure out exactly what the unmet need is, many of us have access to financial aid, or if you don't have access, maybe get your student to show you their financial aid award, and that might have the unmet need, because students don't know what that is. And sometimes we get very interesting amounts on there. So sometimes I don't even know how much weight to put on that unmet need. But I will, and I'm glad we did this with our application recently, is that we are able to see how much has a student taken out in student loans. And I get that students don't want to take out student loans, but a student who's maxed out on their loans is going to, I'm going to score higher than that one student who's like, well, I have maybe $1,000 in student loans, but I don't want to take any more student loans. And this is why I'm asking or applying to this scholarship. It's going to be those students who are like maxing out on their Pell and are close to maxing out on their student loans.
I also if they've taken out no loans and they're asking again for a substantial amount, it does weigh in how we award.
And even like, because last time around we only gave out $2,500 each student. So plenty of them asked for like $10,000. Like they just put their unmet need, and it's significantly more than that. And we acknowledge that. But like everybody kind of has financial need. That's the lowest scoring student is still somebody that is not in a great situation and could use a lot of help. That's one of the most heartbreaking thing about the review process is there are plenty of students who maybe even apply several times and don't get awarded. And they're like, I don't get it. Like I hardly have any Pell left and I'm struggling and I don't want to take out loans. And you're like, I get it, but there's like 14 people that are $50,000 in loan debt and also don't have Pell grants and are like paying medical bills for a child who's in the hospital. So like, it's just like degrees of extremes here, right? So just because a student maybe is not getting awarded, it doesn't necessarily negatively impact them. Like it's heartbreaking to score so many things at 2 as average that are in every context, like are a very high need individual, but it's just the reality of like, when you're going through so many, if you give a thing a 3, you need to have like a pretty set standard for what kind of exceeds your expectations. And the most important part is just being consistent kind of in your scoring from each of us as like individuals. So we kind of all, regardless of whether Linda's the tough one and Destiny's like the cupcake, as long as they're consistent, that's the part that matters. And they're not just like all over the place, right? There's also something to be said, like if you're a student or if you're a student out there and like $500 would actually make a really big deal, or $1,000, like students who don't ask for hardly much at all, like they probably could use a lot more. But if $1,000 could honestly help like make a difference between finishing or not finishing, like I don't want to say ask for the bare minimum because we want you to put in your need, but we have seen that if you're not asking for very much, that is appealing to us because that just means we can award more students and more scholarships. So if a student genuinely needs 500, 1,000, 1,500, they don't have to go up to that max award amount. Those students tend to score higher just because your ask is just less than what other students are asking for. So that might be one of the biggest, I guess, quote unquote cheats, is like really there's what your actual need is. And then there's kind of like, well, what is the ask? Because we kind of leave it open-ended to what the ask is. Plenty of students put anywhere from $3,000 to $20,000. They all kind of get grouped into just a max ask, because you're not getting penalized because you asked for $30,000 compared to someone for $4,000. All those I would say are being grouped together probably. But I would say there's probably some bias in the year of doing this I've seen, where if a student only needs $500, like that is appealing to us as the review committee. Are there any other maybe process or kind of behind the scenes areas you wanted to elaborate on, Destiny or Linda?
I would just kind of echo, it's not because we don't want to award people $30,000. It really is. We get 40 applications easy. And we like, it sucks to award like 3 people and just watch everybody else who did have great applications. So it really is about, we're trying to give as much money to as much people. So that's why.
The only other, well, I have a lot of things to add actually. So for the professionals out there, if you can make sure that your students understand they need to get in touch with you all to fill out that form. We've had students complete the application, but they did not tell their TRIO person to complete the checklist. And so that application may not float to the top. It may be considered incomplete. So it's just really important that if a student tells you, hey, Robin, I am filling out this application for Last Mile, can you make sure to look at my education plan? I mean, all of that they should be doing with us anyways, right? But we've had students that submit it and then we're like, where's the plan? And let's say it's one of my staff members, you know, Andrea's like, I don't remember that student ever talking to me about the Last Mile, which it's unfortunate because now we can't even rely on that education plan. Like, is it real? Are they really going to graduate within a year? So we have students listening, please connect with your TRIO, either McNair or SSS folks, to go over your education plan, make sure that they know they need to submit it, like the professional needs to submit that checklist, which was a change about, gosh, 1 application ago or 2 applications ago, because we were asking the student to submit that checklist. And we decided as a committee, maybe it's better that the staff person submits it directly to OTA. Does that make sense? We're doing a lot of talking. I really was hoping that y'all would have questions.
I'm about to, there's a couple in the chat that I've gotten kind of privately here. So one was asking about how do you find out what your unmet needs are through your university? So that should be something either on your financial aid award letter or something you could get from the financial aid office. We don't ask for like documentation on that. So you don't necessarily need a screenshot that shows your unmet need. That's kind of why we ask the TRIO advisor to like fill out that checklist so they can kind of vouch on your behalf. Be like, oh yeah, like, you know, Doug here definitely has like need. I can pull up even our financial aid side on our side. So you don't need to necessarily prove that, but it can be viewed through your financial aid. But you can kind of present your own summary of unmet need. And then there was a question about what the probability is of getting an award less than what students ask for. This has almost been universally across the board, right? We kind of, the award committee, once they select, we kind of score everyone out, and there often becomes kind of chunks or like gaps where it's like, okay, there's 8 students here, and then there's a pretty big gap. So if we wanted to award all 8, what would that look like based on the amount that we have to fund for that term? So it's very common where you will get awarded for an amount that is less than what you asked for. But I haven't had anybody turn that amount down yet. So the exact amount is more determined by the committee and kind of how many we're awarding, and isn't directly related to the specific ask. But yes, are there any other questions from those of you who have joined us here?
I have a question. Have any community college students been awarded this? I know we don't run up against a lot of Pell running out at the 2-year school or maxed out loans, but I'm trying to think of situations where one of our students would be eligible. And if you've awarded any, what were the circumstances?
I think Matt is looking.
Yeah, I'm counting them up right now. I think 3. So far, up to date, we've awarded 35 individuals with funds. 3 of those have been community college students. So it's a little under 10%. And what I think you often find is it's people who it tends to be more non-traditional students or adult learners who are just like back in education again, or they tried and fit, like they've just kind of had a few attempts and it hasn't quite worked out. And they're like back again. And often they're going to have some of the most substantial life circumstances that are challenges and maybe why they didn't end up finishing that first time around. So there have been instances where we've awarded community college students with funding. In their instances, I think it's important because oftentimes at the community college level, like the cost is just nowhere near what it is at like a U of O or it's Southern or something, right? But you know, there can be those other expenses that can still be significant. And if you don't have, and if you've run out of the ability to use some of the other financial aid to pay for your school costs, like that's when it's like, it may not be a ton of money that I need to pay for courses or like a hold on account. This is a perfect example. Like maybe you just have a hold on your account that prevents you from using your Pell Grants or Oregon Opportunity Grant. That's like a perfect example because that may not even be all that much money if you're just asking for funds to release a hold so then you can utilize the aid that's available to you. That's like very appealing in terms of just the circumstances because it allows you to actually get more bang for your buck than even just the amount we're awarding. So that would be a good circumstance. And nursing too. Yeah, I saw Christine listed that. That would be a good candidate as well because they're just there longer. Particularly if it took them a while to get into the nursing program to begin with.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Matt, my question is about the 45 credits. Is that based off by the time the application is due, they have 45 credits left? Because we're not quite to the end of fall term. Are we taking that into account or is it just?
Yeah, so
okay.
We labeled it like the winter last mile. So we acknowledge we're in fall. So the idea is when you would start winter term, are you within 45 credits?
Okay, great.
How many do you have left starting winter term? That's kind of the cutoff we've been using.
Thanks.
I have a question. So the financial part, you know, talking about unmet need, I know you said you want something succinct. Would it be enough to say, you know, I've talked to my TRIO advisor and this is my amount of unmet need, or do you want it like a table that shows kind of expenses? Like, how do you guys like to see that?
All right, so this is where I'll share my screen again here. Okay, so we give an example of like a successful education plan that was awarded. So this is where you can provide, we don't need like a formal written thing, but in that little box up here, the financial summary, just providing just some brief summaries of kind of what the expenses are. And through the checklist, the idea is that that there is, you know, that they can relatively vouch for what they're asking for. And because we're talking about award amounts there, this isn't like $20,000 in scholarships, it's a few thousand. So I imagine most students, even if you are a traditional student getting plenty of scholarships, could still use an extra $2-3 grand. So I don't imagine most people have, or most TRIO professionals wouldn't have too much hesitation to check in that box demonstrating need. I mean, we say significant financial need, but in general, yeah, just kind of highlighting it in that education plan is kind of what that box is intended to be used for. will be awarded in increments based off of the terms and semesters the university schedule. They're all at once. So we send a letter when I award a student, I notify the students, and then I send a check with an award letter to the institution itself. The letter. So this is one of the challenges and why we honestly started awarding less is each financial aid institution is going to handle it different, and some throw issues. We've had some students win scholarship funds, and all that the institution did was just reduce their student loan amount instead of giving them just a check for the award amount that they didn't necessarily need it to pay down outstanding balances, but they would have rather had the check to pay down like personal expenses and medical expenses and just taken out the extra $2,000 in loans. So in our letter, we try to be like very specific that like this is like a last dollar added scholarship. Any funds that are above and beyond unmet needs should go directly to students. I basically leave it in their hands to distribute in a way that makes the most sense. I just want all the most benefit to go to the student as possible. That's kind of how we write it. So a financial aid office may determine based on what your situation is to spread it out over the terms through the remaining year. The further along we get in the year, the more challenging that becomes because they can only do it for like an academic year. So for awarding spring funding or like summer, you kind of just have that one window to utilize it. So that can complicate things a bit. But if there's enough need there, I would hope that most institutions would just put the full amount in the current term. But we don't always have full control over exactly what they do. I wish we did more. There's plenty of conversations that were had. We did this at the OTA business meeting at NAIOP about what if we just gave the check directly to the students, but because this is a state grant fund, we just want to be able to like be legitimized enough and go through the financial aid institutions to make sure that it's all being done and claimed in ways that are fully transparent. So we do still award them directly to the institution.
Matt, can I jump in here and
Yeah.
talk about this part? Because my institution is one of those places that when we award students scholarships, right? So like, about 2 terms ago, we awarded one of our students a pretty big chunk of last mile. Student was super excited until financial aid said, oh, great, you got the scholarship, we're taking away your loans. And so it became like a wash. They got $5,000, but then $5,000 was taken away in student loans, and they needed this money for all kinds of reasons. The student, thank goodness, was someone who knew how to advocate for herself. So she ended up talking with financial aid and was able to get her cost of attendance increase. Christine, you're not muted.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Calling you out, friend. So what happened was she was able to get her cost of attendance increase and was able to get her loans as part of her financial aid package again. So she was able to get the OTA money, the last mile money, as well as not having her loans taken away. But, again, those professionals out here, if you're working with your students, see if there's any way to increase their cost of attendance. If there's medical bills, if there's childcare, computer cost, any of that stuff, your financial aid office may be able to increase their cost of attendance to be able to absorb the last mile scholarship and any other scholarship without taking away student loans. Matt, did you want to read the question about the sweet spot in terms of how the word count?
It just depends on. I'll be honest. So for myself, I don't really give my perspective of my reading process. So there's the 3 questions. One of them is like, what are the financial challenges? Or particularly what life obstacles and challenges have impacted your academic journey? Like many of those get 3s for me, right? Like I'm not going to judge or compare one life circumstance towards the other. The trio impact one, that can be one where there's some variation. Oftentimes with the educational plan, I more see I'm looking for things to deduct more than I am for like something that's outstanding. Usually the things that are outstanding when it comes to your educational plan are like, are you not asking for all that much? And are you super close to graduation? So if you're one term away, if you're one class away, 2 classes away, and you only need 1,000, like those actually jump out more to me than maybe a traditional student who has 40 credits. Like a lot of those get 2, but that's most of our asks at the same point, right? That the financial challenges is like a little more up in the air. So that's maybe an area where, like to Linda's point, be like really specific, because I've read so many who like go on and on about like how hard the COVID has been on them. And it's like, I get it. I'm not trying to dismiss that or negate that at all, but like every student can say that same thing. Like, I need you to like just be immensely specific about like how has Trio helped you? What specifically have been maybe the largest challenge, or what specific financial challenges? So I've never like deducted for too many words. And if you do 2 sentences, that's probably not good either. There's always 1 or 2 submissions every time that are just like 2 sentences, and they usually are the lowest scoring because they didn't put a ton of time or effort into those, right? So like, I do think like less tends to be more, because we're just gonna be more excited to read that chunk if it's more digestible, but also like put plenty in that. The part where I'd say it's almost, because when it comes to obstacles and challenges, I've seen students list so many things and it's like heartbreaking. But like if you did that same thing in like a really short chunk, I'm still giving you a 3, right? Like, because it's still worthy of that. Like the challenges are still pretty significant. So yeah, I don't know that there's a specific word sweet spots, right? Because every one of us is going to do this process. One of our review people, he like reads each one 3 times over. He's just like the most ambitious scholarship reviewer I've ever seen in my entire life, and takes it so seriously. So like, you know, that's why we try to have a diversity. There's like 8 people who read these, and we all kind of like, you know, have a process. So it's pretty diversified. But
I would say when it comes to the sweet spot for me when I'm reading them, right, your goal isn't necessarily to find that perfect word count. Your goal is to tell your story in a way that's going to set you out as like the top 5 or 6 out of 40 applications. So if that is set, if that's done in 700 words, then it's 700 words. But we are reading a lot of them. So think about how you're telling your story, and how are you telling it in a way that we're getting it succinctly, because we are reading a lot of them. So if it does take you 700 words to tell it, right? Like, can you make it a little shorter? Can you make it a little dynamic? But if it takes 700 words, that's the sweet spot. It's really about when you're submitting it, how are you submitting it in a way that you're standing out as like the top 6, whether that's a small ask, whether that's a really dynamic, like essay questions, whatever. It's how am I writing this in a way that we're going to remember it 40 applications later?
Can I just add, it's funny that Matt brought up our colleague who reads an application 3 times, because when he shared that with us, I'm like, oh my gosh, I do the opposite, which is, if you don't catch me in that first essay, like you have typos, you know, it doesn't make sense. I am probably not going to read your second essay, and I'm certainly not going to read your third essay. So you want to make sure, again, the students out here, if you are turning this in, have someone look at it to make sure it makes sense to that other person, because you know, I write things and I think I'm a brilliant writer. And then I look at it again later, I'm like, oh, shoot, I missed that word. That didn't make sense. But again, just please take some time. If you are asking for this kind of funding, please take the time to have someone look at it and just read it through so it makes sense to another person. Because I will tell you, I will not read something if it it's full of typos, and if you're not answering the prompt, that's the other thing. You need to answer the prompt. It's great that you're telling me your life story, but if you're not addressing what we're asking, again, I'm not going to read it, or I'm not going to read it thoroughly and score it well. I know I'm really sounding really harsh here.
And the questions are broad. So like where that's nice that you can, like, you have some freedom to tell your story. We've also just seen it get way out in left field. So really answer it.
I have a question. Oh,
But there's one in the chat quick. So the applications are actually reviewed totally blind. So I take all the names out, I take the universities out. I will not allow Linda to review any applications from a PSU student or PSU alum similarly, right? Like I had one that was like a former Upper Bound student of mine. And like, I know that going into it. So like, there's any possibility that there could be any kind of bias. We're not allowed to review those applications. So I do my best to do that. If while you're reading it, you realize like, oh, I definitely know this student, like we just ask them to self-identify and avoid that process. But I basically take all their information and blindly put it on like a Google form. So it's just like student one, it's a copy of their educational plan, a list of like how much Pell Grant have they used, how much loans have they taken out, and then it's the 3 essay responses. So we kind of score each of those 4 sections, one student at a time. So yeah, we're not going through like question by question necessarily and comparing. It's just kind of student 1, we look at the 4 sections, student 2, look at the 4 sections, but it's all done blind. So nobody on the committee outside of myself sees any names until the whole things are scored and rated, and we're just kind of deciding how much to award. Rarely do we get to a point, it's never gotten to a point where we're like debating one answer over the other. Like usually the scoring system allows for enough separation where there's a clear kind of like funded group and non. So Cara, what was your question?
yeah. Well, first, before I ask it, I just want to thank you guys. I know this takes a lot of time. We've had quite a few students, several students who've benefited from this award. It's really changed things for them. And so I know it takes a lot of time. I appreciate Matt, you overseeing it, and all the readers. Cheers to you. So my question is GPA. So if you have a student who's had a term or two that's a little shaky, they're close to finishing, does that sort of make a difference, or how does that kind of get put
No,
in?
it's completely blind to GPA.
Okay.
We don't care.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because almost everything cares, right? Like
Yeah.
there's so many of our students where they're just never eligible, and we've just kind of like, look, if you're close to finishing, you're close to finishing. Who cares what you did
Yeah, because
beforehand? Like,
I had a student who was close to finishing for a couple terms, and he had to work 40 hours a week, and so his GPA just tanked. And so, he was going to finish, and I hope he's, fingers crossed, this term. But yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you.
all right. Any other questions? All right. I've had a lot of side eye going on here. I've had to totally rebuild parts of the website, but the checklist part has been rebuilt. That's back in live. And I need about 5 minutes, and the actual application for students will be up again. But those are working again. So if you're watching this on the recording, everything will probably look fine. But if you're trying to pull up the actual application now, it doesn't work. Although it'll look actually prettier now. It won't all be smashed to the side, and this like disability accessibility tools won't get in the way anymore. So I've kind of was postponing this until after this round to make them look prettier. And it looks like I'm being forced to do it on a live recorded Zoom call now because I broke something yesterday when I was editing the website. So are there any other final questions?
No, this was helpful though. Thank you for having it.
And if anybody, your staff, like, so we've kind of, not necessarily everybody has to read every single one. We kind of have this mathematical system to still create some fairness and whatnot. But the more people we can add to this, it's just the more fair I think the process comes. And then it actually reduces the workload for each individual. Because if there's 3 people and there's 50 scholarships, we kind of need to read all 50 to have enough diversity of thought. But if there's 12 people that are reviewing these, it can be something more like 20 applications per person, and we still have enough diversity of people reading each one. So if you or anybody you know would be down to just kind of be a part of this process. I mean, Linda, Destiny, if you could provide any context to like what does the time commitment look like at this stage, now that we've kind of have what this is down pat. It's not so much determining what the process is anymore, it's just the review.
I think the time commitment, yeah, once we got it all figured out and it's been running for a while, there is the point where you have to sit down and score all the applications, and that's definitely something people either like to do and really enjoy, or it's one of those things people do not like to do. So you do read and score a lot of essay questions. That's really the biggest time commitment.
Unless you're Linda and it's badly edited. I'm just kidding, Linda. Just kidding. I
Well,
agree.
but it's true, Tara. Like
I know,
this
I
is,
get it.
I think
get
this is my, maybe my fifth round of reading, and it goes by fast once you get the hang of it, right? It's like for, any kind of scholarship reading. So there is an hour after we all read to kind of decide how much are we giving this quarter, who are we giving it to? But like Matt was saying, I don't think there ever has been a time where like, no, we're going to really debate who, that last person is going to be.
Yeah.
It takes me to read applications, maybe all 40 of them in 2 hours. And again, that's because there are some, as Matt was saying, they'll give us like 3 sentences. Well, I'm exaggerating. That may be like 4 sentences. And I'm like, I'm not going to even know. And I just move on to the next one.
For me,
And-
that's a blank education plan. When you submit it and there's just nothing in
Yes.
the education plan, like there's no points. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like even if you qualify at this
Which
point.
that could be a technical thing too, right? Like plenty of people fill it out and didn't realize they didn't save it. And then they submit a blank one. So I feel bad sometimes because I probably can guess what happened. They honestly filled it out and just didn't know how to save a fillable PDF. But that's all we have to work with. And the only time you meet is just that review committee. Because like when the due date hits on the 18th, I kind of just send an email that goes to a spreadsheet that has all the links to the forms you need. And like on the spreadsheet, you like can enter you don't even enter your scores, right? Because that's done on the form. So the only time we meet is just that review. And usually it's like 10 minutes of me explaining the process, which nobody probably cares about at this point, but I just want to make sure there's transparency. 10 minutes deciding who to give money to. And then the next 40 minutes is usually us just talking process and like picking all the next dates of like, when's the next one due? When are we going to review it again? And when are we going to meet again in 3 months? So it's honestly not a ton of like negotiating. So.
And can I say, because I at some point would like to step off of the selection committee, is that it really does help when you're talking to your staff and your students about the scholarship. Again, I'm not going to be reading any PSU students, but if they're coming to me and go, oh, what is this last mile thing? And they're asking for help with essays, I can kind of give them pointers like what I'm doing right now. That can help a student get the scholarship, right? And you have a sense of like, what is it that committee really is looking for? So I mean, I would recommend sitting on this committee at some point. My hope is that we continue to get state funding so we can support our TRIO students in getting their degree. Because I know Matt was saying every year, well, the last 2 years, we've been able to give at least 100 grand away, which is amazing.
All right, if there is nothing else, I appreciate all the time. And Michelle and Chelsea, I've got you all added there. And I appreciate the time. Yeah, and if there's ever any questions at all, like feel free to funnel that stuff to me or specific things or improvements. Like Leela out of Oregon State had made a bunch of suggestions to the checklist to even like a note section. Like I don't look at adding a bunch of notes isn't going to like make or break someone, but just kind of adapting some of the process-based stuff to kind of make more sense from your perspective as the one working with students. So yeah, it's always good to, we can always keep tweaking things and improving the process from here. So, all right. Well, thank you all for joining. Okay, now you got, what is it, 18th? It's like a week and change to go complete a bunch of these. So
Thank you so much, everybody.
yeah, take care.
So Matt, I'm going to be out.